citation. All right. So today we're doing lesson 6 and we're talking about random numbers. So a lot of times in games we'll need to use random numbers in order to get things to randomly happen. So our question that we're considering today is how can we make our programs behave differently each time that they're run? And we can do that by adding in something called a random number. So students are introduced to the random number block and how it can be used to create new behaviors in the programs. They then learn how to update variables during a program and use those skills to draw randomized images. So we're going to click continue here. And on lesson 6 level 2, we've got random numbers. You have a new block in the math drawer. So each one of these up here at the top is called a drawer. And so we've got a drawing drawer and a math drawer. So we've got a math drawer, and in that math drawer, we've got something called a random number. If you make your drawings with random numbers, it'll look a little bit different every time you run your program. You can learn about the block by hovering over it in the toolbox and choosing See Examples. So if I hover over it, this blue box shows up that says, that helps me, and it says random number, and then the first number is the minimum, the second number is the maximum, and it returns a random number in the closing range from minimum to maximum. So if I want to randomize a number between 0 and 10, and I want to include 0 as an option, my minimum would be 0 and my maximum would be 10. And it would randomly choose every time that I press run, it would randomly choose a number between 0 and 10, including 0. If I want it to be 1 through 10, I would do 1 to 10. Okay? We'll yeah. Yeah. So let's go through the lesson today, and it'll give us some examples because we're going to use random number today in almost all of our code. And so then that maybe will give you some ideas of some ways to use it. And then there might be some others that people might have in mind when after we've gone through some today. Okay, so in order to see this one work, we've got this background that is tomato colored, and it says fill orange, and then the ellipse is going to appear at a random x value between 0 and 400, because if we remember first, when we draw our ellipse, the x variable is first, and then the y, and then the width, and then the height. So if I put a random number between 0 and 400, that's being done every time I press reset and run. So right now it's here. I'm just going to press reset and run really fast a bunch of times, and we'll see that the circle will randomly appear in a bunch of different spots across my screen. So it's randomized wherever it's going to happen. One way that this is used in code to answer Maddie's question is if I want, say, coins to be falling from the top of my screen, and I want them to show up and drop from a random X location. So I want the coin to drop anywhere across the top of the screen, but I always want it to drop across the top. If I put in this random number 0400 into my coin dropping code, it'll randomize where it's dropping the coin. So there's one use. Okay, and we'll show a bunch more here in a bit. But we're going to go ahead and press, whoops, what's it want us to do? Change the numbers inside random number and run the code again a few times to see what changes. Not sure why. Click event finish the level. Sure you want to move on. Run the program several times. Change the numbers inside random number. Oh, change the numbers. There we go. You have to change one of the numbers to really whatever you want. Either the 0 or the 400. I changed the 400 to 100. And then what that changed was it only showed up on the left side of the screen. Come on. There we go. All right. Lesson 6, random numbers, level 3. Here's the same sun from last time, and right now, only the x-coordinate is random, but you can make the y-coordinate random too. Use the random number from the ellipse's y parameter so the circle is drawn in a random y position too. As long as your circle is appearing at a random x and y position, you can move on. So we're going to go to our math drawer here, that orange math drawer, and we're going to grab out this random number block and we're going to drag it into the y parameter of the ellipse block, which is that second spot that has a 200 in it right now. We're going to drag this random number over the 200 and drop it in. Okay. Then I'm going to change the 1 and the 10 to 0 and 400. And what that's doing is it's making the random number between, or the ellipse, both the x parameter, which is this first one, and the y parameter, which is the second one. It's making a random number for each parameter, and therefore the x is random and the y is random between 0 and 400, which is our maximum. So it's going to show up anywhere on the screen. So if I press reset and run a bunch of times, I can see all of the different random locations that this sun, they're calling it, is showing up on the screen. Okay. All right. Variables and random numbers. Variables can be assigned a random number too. This lets you save a single random value so that you can use it as many times as you want in your program. So assign a random number to the variable I size so that the i's automatically change size every time that you run the program. Remember, the left and right i's should always match each other. Okay, so we want the I size variable to randomly change. So instead of me going down to line 12 and 13 and putting in a random size for each 2 times on 12 and each 2 times on 13, that wouldn't work. So instead, I need to go to my math drawer, grab out random number, and I need to put it in on line 1 where it says 27. Okay, what that's going to do is that's going to let me change the I size to be the same always. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that number there, and I'm going to put between 1 and then the second number, I'm going to have it be 30. So now if I reset and run, both of my i's are going to be a random size each time that I run my program. Anywhere between 1 and 30. But they're both going to be the same because I changed the random number up on line 1 instead of down below. Because if I changed it down below, then each one could be a random number and they wouldn't be the same. Okay. Right. These two flowers use a single variable to store their petal size, but the value stored in the variable changes in the middle of the program. Okay. Run the program several times to see how it works. Discuss the code with your partner and then change the program so that the flowers have random petal sizes as in the image. Okay. So if we press run, each time that we press run, the flower's petal size is always the same. Okay. What we can do is every time that I want petal size to be used, on line 4 they set the petal size to 30. If I grab go into my math drawer and grab a random number and drag it out into 30. If I do, say, let's do 20 to 40, then I'm going to do the other one a little bit bigger. So what's happening here on line 15 is it's setting the petal size to 60. So if I press run every time, right now the only one that's changing is the first flower up in the top left. Okay, if I want them both to change, I need to put a random number in both of them. What's happening here is on line 15, the petal size is being reassigned a value, and I can reassign a value as many times as I want. Okay, so I'm going to do this one, I'm going to do 40 to 80. So now when I press reset and run, my flower's petal size is changing in both of them to a random number. The first one up in the top left, any random number or petal size between 20 and 40. And on line 15, that's changing the bottom right one to any petal size as a random number between 40 and 80. Okay. All right, we can press finish there. Let's do A. All right, it says modify the planets. You've learned how to randomize things, so it's time to put all the knowledge to use in this scene. Make the scene more fun. Give the planets random sizes so it's always changing. For more added fun, randomize their positions a little bit too. Okay, so right now if I press run, here's all the planets that I have. If I want to randomize their size, one thing that I can do instead of the ellipse being, so this first ellipse on line 3 is 0 to 100. One thing that I can do is I can click the little arrows next to 200 here, and then I can put in a random number. And I want this ellipse here to be a random size between, say this first one I want to be anything between, So there's two ways of doing this. Okay. The way that I'm about to do it, so I'm going to show you two ways of doing this, and then you can choose, you can do both or choose which one you want to do. Okay. Let's say I make this first ellipse that's showing up at 0 to 100 over here. I do that. The width is a random value between 25 and 35. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the height. Okay. This is what's going to happen. Okay. And I can make that a little bit bigger. I could do 50 to 65 on both instead of 25, 35. You'll just have to, so you have to, this little arrow here next to the 200, you have to click this little arrow to create an open space. So see how I click the arrow and it creates this open space here, and then I click the right arrow one more time and it creates another open space. You have to click that arrow next to it in order to get those open spaces. There's a little arrow to the right of the number 200. And then you'll drag and drop random number into that open space. Okay. And you might be able to see it better, Maddie, when or if you choose to rewatch the video, because then you can pause it and take a look. So while I was doing this, I was thinking, okay, this one is, there's going to be an issue because, well, here, let me, there's going to be an issue with this because both of these are going to see how every once in a while it makes it kind of oblong. Let's get one here like that. See how it's kind of like ovally shaped? If I want all of my planets to be a perfect sphere, I'm going to have to create a variable. So the second way of doing this is to go to your variables toolbox, and what I would do is I would put in this underneath the, so if I'm doing the salmon planet, I could do variable planet is what I could, or I could call it planet 2. And I could set the value to, let's say that I want it to be a random number between, I want it to be a little bit bigger than the yellow planet, so I want it to be anywhere between 65 and 75. And then what I'm going to do for this ellipse is I'm going to then put inside of here, I'm going to say use planet 2, the variable. So what's going to happen here on line 5 and 6 is it's going to see, oh, okay, I'm creating a variable. It's called planet 2, and I'm going to randomly roll the dice or spin, and I'm going to pick a number between 65 and 75 and assign it to the value or to the variable planet 2. So now on line 6 it says, okay, I'm going to draw a circle. It's going to be salmon. I'm going to draw it at the x value or at the x location or coordinate 80 and the y coordinate 200. And then I'm going to grab whatever random number we rolled up here, and I'm going to put it in both the width and the height. So what's happening is it's going to be both the same number, so I still have a perfect sphere. Okay? So now it's a different size every time, but it's always a perfect circle. Do we see the difference between the two? Whichever one you would like, and in all honesty, if you want to just do those two that I just showed you there, just like I did, go ahead and just do those two and you can press finish. I just want you to understand what the difference between the two is and how they're done differently. Okay, so this one is assigning a random value for both the width and then re-rolling again for the height. Whereas on line 5 and 6, it's rolling the dice first, saying, okay, this is the number that we're using, and then assigning that same number for both the width and height. Okay. All right. So this is our assignment for today, the wonderful rainbow snake. I love this one. So this program draws a rainbow snake to make the snake draw differently every time. You'll need to use random numbers. Okay, run the program several times to see how the starter code works, and then add at least 3 new colored circles to your rainbow snake. Use random number to make the rest of the snake's body move up and down like the first 3. Okay, and then you could, if you wanted a challenge, you could try and make the size of some of the circles random as well. But you don't have to do that last part. You don't have to do the challenge. Okay, so if I press reset and run, it's going to make it look like the snake is kind of slithering. Okay, so if we take a look at our code here, what's being done is I will do the next one with you. Okay, so that you have one more done. So we're going to do the green circle. Okay, and then I'm going to make you do the blue and the purple one on your own. Okay, so first off, right now, if I look at my past code, every time that I'm ready to do another circle, I need to dip my paintbrush or dip my fill color in a different color. So right now it's yellow, I need green. So I'm going to drag out the fill color block underneath, and I'm going to change it to green. Okay, so now the circle that I draw is going to be green. Then I'm going to drag out the ellipse block, and then I'm going to take a look at what they did in the past. So this first one, they did 100, then they did 140, then they did 180. What should I do next? 220, correct. Okay, they're going up by 40 every time. Then if I look at my past code, they drag in this random number and they put the random value between 190 and 210. So what that's saying is draw the ellipse at the x value, so left to right, draw it at 220, but then go ahead and pick a random number between 190 and 210 for the number to go up and down. Okay, so I need to go to my math drawer and then grab the random number and put it in the second box. And then I'm going to put 190 and 210. Okay, and then we look at the width and the height of the ellipse being drawn, and it's a 50 by 50. So I'm going to change the 400s to 50 by 50. And if I press reset and run, my green circle is acting the same way that my other circles were as well. Okay, so you need to do, yep. So those spots should already be provided. So all you have to do is drag and drop the random number out and drop it once it's got a yellow circle, a yellow highlight around where you want to drop it into. So if I have an ellipse block out there and I want it to go in the second space, this where the second 200's at, I can go to my random number, grab it, and then I just wait for it to highlight that second 200 with that yellow highlight around it. And then when I drop it and let go of my left click, it drops that random number into that spot. Okay. All right. So I will give you the next 5 minutes to go ahead and work on those last two there. Go ahead and submit your screenshot to Google Classroom once you have that snake done. You need to do the blue circle and the purple circle, or violet, whatever color you want it to be, purple or violet, and submit that to Google Classroom with a screenshot, okay? If you want to, if you've already done all of that and you want a little bit of a challenge, you can go ahead and try and make the size of some of the circles random too. Okay, remember the width and the height are the last two numbers, so you could change the size to be random. Okay, unfortunately we don't have that variable block in our toolbox, so we can't make the width and the height on our circles for our snake the same size, so they wouldn't stay perfect circles like they did in the last level that we just showed. So we wouldn't be able to do that. I would prefer it that way, but we can't. We can't because we don't have the tools. So once you get that, go ahead and press or screenshot and then turn it into Google Classroom. Yes, Blake. Sure.